it's too late. Because I get the feeling that we're on a global Titanic sinking, and the corporation, or the corporate consciousness is the captain saying full speed ahead when the ship is half sunk and there's no more lifeboats left. So I'm looking at the news in terms of what's happening on, especially in the United States, and the subprime mortgage housing crisis and the collapse of banks, and the issue of a global financial meltdown. Do you have any comments about this?
Sure. I'm much less pessimistic to start with, but that might be my general character. I don't think we are on the Titanic. We might be on the Titanic, but not yet sinking. So that's the good news. Titanic was a nice boat before it started sinking. I do not really see a lot of difference between collapsing banks, as you say, and the financial meltdown that we see today with other crises in finance that we had, Black Mondays and other colored Mondays. I once read, I don't know which crisis it was, but it was a title on a Dutch newspaper. We were living in Holland in those days that said, "Tonight, the world has lost 700 billion euros. Did you see anything out of it?" And of course you don't. I mean, the values of companies have dropped overnight with $700 or $800 billion, but did it change anything in economy? No. I think it might change for those people that have capital, that have dividends, that have shares. But I'm not so negative that this might be the beginning of the end. It might cut some consumerism, and I would say let it be. It might give a start to some other more conscious buying behavior. Let it be. And the more some people will be confronted with, say, a financial crisis, the more rapid it may go. But I can only refer to Machado. We lay down the path in walking. There is no future. You make the future today. And if we would all decide, and I know it's a little bit hypothetical, if we would change our attitude today, it will have an impact tomorrow. So I'm less pessimistic about that bank collapse and the impact of that. I do think that we see a slight change, and we should go much further. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. It does sound like we have a lot of feedback on the line. So if you have not pressed star 6, please do so.
Makes sense. The way to cut it is if you're getting 50,000 euros, it's 20,000.
All right, whoever is talking about 50,000 euros, we can hear your voice, which means your line is not muted. We got you. Anyone else have a question for Walter?
Laura and I went down to see my son Nat.
Okay, this is Fred. I have a question.
Let me just interrupt. I hear Charlene on the line. How is that possible?
Yes, I do too. Charlene, is your phone muted? Charlene.
Maybe you can. Maybe someone can call her on the other line.
Send her an email. Yep.
Okay. Or call her. All right. Sorry.
Okay. Hi. This is Fred in Bethesda, Maryland. I have a question for you, Walter. I'm curious about your kind of your observation or perspective on what's happening in the U.S. in terms of the business schools. I actually am interested in these areas and have been for a long time, but I'm kind of out of the academic circle. So I'm just wondering, is there any headway in the United States in terms of business schools picking up or stepping up to the plate on some of the things that you're talking about?
All right, take this over now.
Okay. Yes and no. I think there are a few schools, as far as I know. I don't know them all, of course, and I sorry to name one, but like Case Western, for instance, is highly involved in the Global Compact movement and the consequences of that. Just to name one, there are some others that are, for instance, involved in the academic task force of Global Compact. But Case Western, I know they really try to do something about it. Clearly, and that's my view, of course, from the other end of the ocean, the U.S. paradigm is, of course, if possible, even more finance, even more short-term than there is in Europe. I mean, that is no doubt, and you'll see that in business schools. what you also see in the U.S. remarkably, and I always give that as an example, a society like IONS exists in the U.S. and not in Europe. Why doesn't it exist here and does it exist there? There are many other very interesting initiatives that rather come up in the U.S. and less here, but they are not inside business schools. I agree with you. You see lots of schools on integrative studies, schools on systemic studies, etc. You all have that in the U.S., but it is outside the business schools. So I might believe that it might be even a little bit more difficult in the U.S. to get a business school to move in that direction. I'm not so convinced. I think it isn't that much better here in Europe. We still need over there as much as over here things that I still call business schools, but I really want to go a serious step in a different direction. I don't know of any U.S. schools just as much as I don't know of many European schools either.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I guess I would be a little more optimistic in the U.S. anyway, which is the only area I know a little bit about. You know, there are faculty, individual faculty that I think are pretty sympathetic with you, but they probably have the same problem you're mentioning, going from an individual to moving a larger academic institution. It's a difficult challenge.
Sure, and in the academic community, it's certainly in the U.S. even more than in Europe, it has to do about publications and about career. And if it's very down to earth what I'm saying, but those individual initiatives should move into school initiatives, into corporate initiatives. That's one thing. Secondly, one possible way, and it's not done the way I say it, is we should have an A journal that publishes these kind of things, and I know it is not done like that. But as long as we wouldn't have that, it might be difficult, specifically for young academics, to go further in that direction. But I'm certainly not pessimistic. If I would have given that impression, I'm not at all. I really believe that eventually it is going to change and we are going to make a difference. So I'm reasonably optimistic, just as you are.
Okay, we probably have time for about one more question. Someone else would like to ask something of Walter? And thank you all for muting your phones. It's much more quiet now. So you have to press *6 to unmute to ask your question. Tina, do you have any more questions for Walter?
I would like to hear about 3 of your next projects, visions, dreams, that you and Erna would like to participate in and see happen.